Everybody.
Good. How are you?
Fantastic.
Great. We have a few people that are still signing on or haven't unmuted their cameras. There's Sheldon.
Hey, everybody. Morning or afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, Emily. All right, we have quite a few folks here. We'll have Phil get us started, and we'll welcome others in as they come. So go ahead, Phil.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. As Stephanie's mentioned, my name is Phil Abeda. I am living in the Denver area. I'm from the class of 2003. So I'm a kind of a relic, but I am happy to be online with all of you and hosting this awesome gathering. I want to just say Stephanie, who's our producer and coordinator for these affinity groups, is such a blessing, and she's been working hard this morning trying to get this all set up. They're having some internet issues in Grand Rapids. And so, Stephanie, thank you. Just also want to acknowledge and give thanks to the staff that are online with us as well. Katie Van Timmeren, she has been a blessing for many years. Emily Farwell, she's not as long, but just as much a blessing. And we just want to say thank you for joining us today. Let's see. I don't see Shannon or Ron. Usually they jump on and they may jump on a little bit later. But anybody else from DeVos that I have missed, thank you for your participation. And just want to thank you for the work that you do for all of us. So first, I want to let you know that we are recording this session. If you haven't yet consented to being recorded, your presence gives us your full consent to make this session available on our YouTube page. So just want to say thank you. Next, I want to share with you our Affinity Dialogue ground rules. Please keep your audio muted unless you're talking. Please keep your video unmuted for the sake of transparency, healthy engagement, and also so our moderators can witness the nonverbal communication. So they want to see if you like it or not. So please keep your video unmuted. If your background where you're based has anything that would be considered inappropriate or not God-honoring, we ask that you blur your background video. When speaking, please introduce yourself, your city, and the year you graduated. And if you're not an alumnus from DVULI, you can just again mention that as well. You may be a guest of somebody who is an alumnus. Next, please keep your questions or comments to less than 1 minute. This hour is going to go like that. It always does. So if you wouldn't mind, keep your questions or comments to less than 1 minute. Use the chat for positive reactions, resources, or contact information. If you're in transit, if you're driving right now, please do not use the chat. In fact, please keep your eyes on the road or pull over and park. We have this disclaimer. DVULI is not responsible for any harm while you're on this call and choosing to drive. I know how you urban youth workers operate. You do things while you're driving. Please pull over. We would appreciate that. Next, I want to let you know that there will be no AI permission given because we are recording this and you will be sent a link of this conversation. Finally, I got a couple more. If there are anyone in your team that is not a DVULI alumnus, please make sure that they get introduced. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Myron and Whitney. They will be sharing as moderators today. And today, as you know, our topic is discussing youth at risk of homelessness. So I don't know who's going to take it away first, Myron, Whitney, but by all means, take it away.
Well, I'll introduce myself first, and then I'll let Whitney introduce herself, and then we're going to just bounce some questions off each other, and we'd love to hear from everyone else as well. So as requested, my name is Myron Bernard. I am part of the DVULI class of 2011. Phil was my coach during that season, and it's just great to see his smiling face. And to retain that friendship. And I live in Tacoma, Washington, which is where this is my home city where I was part of the cohort here. I currently serve as the deputy director at an organization called the Tacoma Rescue Mission. So, Whitney, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hello, I am Whitney Williams. I am a part of the Memphis 2024 cohort with the great Ron Carter as our fearless, and oftentimes he had to do a lot for our special group, and we appreciate him immensely. So props to Ron. I serve as the executive director for a small faith-based nonprofit here in Memphis called My Town Miracles. Our goal is to alleviate burdens and barriers for Memphis youth and their families by partnering with like-minded organizations, churches, and schools to ensure basic needs are met for kids inside their home. So I am so glad to be here. This is a very pertinent conversation. So please contribute. We all have a lot to learn.
Well, let's start by talking about just that word homelessness, or people who are experiencing homelessness. I think oftentimes when we hear about it in media, I know there was literally something on the front page of our local paper today that's been creating all sorts of buzz and comments on social media about the number of people who are experiencing homelessness in our community that's rising. And I think we have this definition or this idea of what homelessness is. And one of the things that we wanted to do is to kind of challenge that or to get us to think more broadly about that. So Whitney, I'm going to ask you a question, and maybe we can allow the field to respond to this too. But how are we defining homelessness, and what does it really mean to be like a youth who's experiencing homelessness?
That I think is so important. I think historically we consider homelessness as the man or the woman standing on the street corner asking for change. And with the times we live in at this time in this series and period, we see homelessness show up as maybe a youth who is staying on grandma's couch, or an athlete who is couch surfing with some of his teammates, a youth group member who you see once a month because they're bouncing around from city to city, popping in and out. So homelessness and being at risk of homelessness is way broader, and that's kind of where we want to guard the conversation of not being too small, and that predominantly all of our youth that are experiencing poverty or living in a low-income neighborhood are likely at risk of poverty. A lot of our families are facing eviction and are just getting by paycheck to paycheck. So in all those considerations, kind of think of how often do we hear of a kid who may be dropped off at a different house every single time they're going home after Bible study.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if we're thinking more broadly with that definition, and maybe we could do just a show of hands, or just kind of polling our field here, how many of us on the call know a young person who's experiencing homelessness? Like yeah, right. And I think what we want to do is, even as we're talking about, this isn't just for young people who are experiencing homelessness, but this is a forum for youth who are at risk of homelessness. And when we're using this expanded definition that Whitney's offering us, I think all of us should recognize, actually, in just about every urban community, many of the young people that we're working with are at risk of homelessness, that they're that close. And we hear about it, right? Like, and it may be in a coded language. Like, I don't know if in Washington State, we have Section 8 vouchers for housing assistance, and you may hear about like, oh, my dad has got a problem with our Section 8 voucher, or you may hear about like mom's got some, and you hear about, oh, well, we got to move. And what we're not hearing in that is like they are that close to experiencing homelessness, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Whitney, when we're working with young people who are experiencing homelessness, how do we discern, like, what are some of those signs that we can be like, hey, this is how a young person is experiencing homelessness?
Yeah, I would love to offer that question to our group and I'll chime in at the end, but this is something that is huge in my sector. So, far and wide, Miss Willeen, Miss Brenda, Miss Eva, Miss Annie, how would you guys either feel you've discerned, like you have this feeling, something that's shown up, or there's specific signs? Do you guys have any examples? Feel free to unmute yourself or just share it in the chat.
Well, I'll just say that some of the children that we work with, my name is Willeen Lee. I'm with Creative Life Incorporated. We're a small school, K through 12. But some of the children that, as a matter of fact, this week alone, we have a young, he's about, I guess, 6. And he came to school with 2 different color socks on, and one of the socks wasn't clean. And so I asked him, I said, hey, let me help you with your socks. And he just started talking. He said, Miss Willeen, we gotta move. We gotta move. And I said, really? And then he said, yes, ma'am. Now he's about 6. Now, how could he know? How could he possibly know this at 6 years old? But come to find out, they are being evicted. So that's one of the signs. I mean, you can tell by the child's the way they act, what they wear, and I mean, and it's heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Miss Brenda, do you have any experience?
I have a couple of experiences, and one of them, I'm Brenda Flanoy, and I'm with the class of 2003 also. And I'm with Church of the Living God, and I work with the youth department within the district, the local district and national level of the Church of the Living God. So I see quite a bit in our youth department. But a couple of things that stand out when they come to the youth meetings or whatever. First of all, you only see them every now and then. And when some of them, well, this particular family usually needs a ride home. And if we take them to grandma's house, we know that the family obviously is in some type of transition, which they always are, because when we take them home, they're usually not in that home very long, and when I say very long, sometimes it's as little as 6 months, or within a year or 2, they have moved 2 or 3 times, just trying to either keep up or, maybe not paying rent. Now I got to find somewhere else to stay until that runs out. And then I got to move again. But anytime they say we go into grandma's house, that's usually a trigger to start watching the pattern of they must be in transition again. And, I had another one and I forgot it, but we do have a food pantry, and sort of like Willie was saying, there are a couple of families where they're not dressed very well, and they really heavily depend on the food pantry to help them through. And sometimes the little boy comes with a cart or a wagon or something and say, my mama sent me up here to get, the food. And that's another trigger that, they're in transition. So now we've lost that family because we don't know where they live. And so those are signs that we look for when we work in, especially the youth department.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's to both of you, speaking of like especially going to grandmothers or we're going to have to move to aunts, I think something that is a trend that we really don't dive into is the reality around low school enrollment. And of course, we have the reality for families who share custody, and it may be my father lives in a different city, from divorce. But oftentimes, that's one of the clearest indicators, or can be one of the clearest indicators for youth at risk of homelessness, when I'm going to go stay with my aunt in Michigan this summer because of overcrowding, or sharing beds or sharing couches in the city or during the school year. So thinking of that, of different holidays and breaks, I think my challenge question to take this a step further is we can look at this and we can say like, oh yeah, like that we know that that's where they are. And oftentimes, there's beauty in celebrating multi-generational homes, right? And we see the positive side. And of course, we want to acknowledge what that looks like for a youth who not only has mom and dad or whomever as their direct guardian, but then having the influence of grandmother, grandfather, auntie, that there's huge benefits to that, right? But what could we also recognize as the risks of knowing that kiddos are staying, or having to stay over at other folks' house? What risks could this play out for a youth involved in our program that is at risk of homelessness?
Annie, you're still muted.
Yeah, Miss Annie, do you want to share? You're still muted. Stephanie, could you automatically unmute her by chance?
I can just ask Annie to unmute.
There it goes. I think a very simple thing to consider in that is obviously with multiple family members, how great of a night's sleep are we getting if we're 16 and sharing a bed with 3 siblings, right? If I'm over at grandma's house and we were already receiving SNAP or food benefits and that was for her small household, are we eating well, right? We're looking at the scope and scale of how the impact is rippling out to showing up of, grumpy and maybe moody kiddos showing up to Bible study that are normally cheerful. Like that's another sign we can look at.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Whitney.
can speak
Oh,
to
go
this
ahead.
real quickly too. So I am a graduate of DVULI too, Grand Rapids 2000. And when I think about homelessness, I worked in residential treatment and mental health for about 25 years, and just that piece of consistency for kids is so key. When you think about those basic needs being met, whether they have proper nutrition, proper sleep, proper even exercise. I had a situation recently. It's been a little bit. My brother and sister-in-law are educators in my neighborhood. My brother brought to my attention that he's like, "Do you have like 12 kids that live next door to you?" And I said, "Well, I mean, I do have a lot of kids that live next door, and there's like the cousins that are always over and all." But I'm like, I feel like we have like there are 4 that are consistently there. And he's like, no, I looked and it's like they're all listed as like living next door to you. And I'm like, well, it's always like a playground, but the reality is that there wasn't a consistent other place to stay. So that house was like the register for schoolhouse, which means that kind of like Whitney and Myron are saying, there's all these places that these kiddos are staying. And there's all these like, am I going to get dinner tonight? When am I going to wear? Where am I going to do my laundry? Who's going to tuck me in bed tonight? Kind of pieces that really, from, a basic needs standpoint, really impacts the development of kiddos.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, Stephanie, I'm glad you mentioned like the laundry piece. I think that was one for me when I was first beginning doing urban ministry of recognizing. I mean, that was one of the signs that like added to this like list of things where I was like, oh wait, this is not a standard living situation that I was entering into. And for this young person sleeping on a friend's couch, that friend had multiple pets in the home because mom was kind of like this person who needed to save every animal. So multiple pit bulls, multiple cats in the home, in a small home. And so his clothing, as terrible as this is, would often just smell like animal, animal urine or just even animal. And I have pets. This is not me like trying to be against animals, but there's such a stigma associated with poverty. And for a young person to have to show up in clothes that to school that smells bad, like for him, as finding as gracious a way as possible to say, hey, can I just come over with a big Tupperware and grab a few of your clothing items and help you do some laundry? And then this is going to be your bin. Like you're going to keep this bin. You're going to get to keep your clean clothes in here. And this other bin is for your dirty clothes. And whenever it's full, you can say, hey, can we wash my clothes? and I'll come over and help you get your laundry done. I think finding some ways of recognizing we can't solve all of the challenges, but we can be aware of, gosh, that would really suck to smell bad and to like broadcast to everyone, here's what my family's going through. So
Yeah. And I think
Wait.
even elevating that to consider sports teams, how many are youth have an impediment of being able to participate in a sport or receive consequences from coaches for showing up to practice? You know what I mean? Do we challenge our students in the same way when it's participating in Bible study? Are we looking at them at Bible study and saying, why don't you have such and such done? And like, is there accountability that's being inflicted on a youth that's in a situation they can't control? Or is it, hey, we do need to work on a couple of responsibility, maturity things? So, that is something that we often give is gently used sporting equipments so that youth who potentially couldn't participate in a sport before, whether because cleats, we can't afford them, but also cleats are on a different side of town most days. So let's store them in the neighborhood. So when you have practice, you have like your little locker and you're able to play from there.
Mhm. One thing I thought about, Whitney, was how the child can be at risk of when they're homeless is, when you were talking about how they're shifted from a house, each house, the auntie house, grandma house, is the risk of sexual abuse, incest, physical abuse,
Mhm.
I mean, mental abuse, all of these things. And I mean, the child has no way of knowing that, even that an uncle or an aunt is would be harmful because they're their relative. So that's
Right,
one of the things that I was thinking about as far as the risk of concern.
right, right. I
And
think that's so true.
and to piggyback off that, Miss Willing, I'm sorry, you guys. I'm in the process of opening this building, and so I've been interrupted a couple of times. I apologize for that. But my name is Eva Staten. I am class of 2024 Louisville and the executive director of Power Inc. And we deal a lot with substance abuse. And so even recently, 2 days ago, we had a youth outside that we had to Narcan. And it was so disheartening to where um, I have a son his age, and to see that he was obviously homeless, but he, oh gosh, it was. I was so unaware until I got into this field of how many of our youth are battling with addiction,
Mhm,
and which leads to the homelessness.
mhm,
And it was a group of us in the middle of a parking lot, and it's not so good in the town in Louisville, West End, and I went to go get him a pillow because he was beating his head against the concrete. And then all of us, complete strangers, just got in a circle and we started praying.
mhm,
Some girl, because I was emotional. So a lady came up to me and she said, "Do you know him?" And I was like, "No, but that's somebody's baby. That's somebody's child. And, they could be mine." So she said, "Well, I was going to intervene and, with spiritual warfare." And I was like, "Great." Because I had prayed when I got out of the car and I was like, the more of us that's praying. So she started praying. And I swear to God, you guys, he literally got up because he wouldn't participate. He was out of it. And when she started praying, and all of us were together around him, he literally got up, started crying, said he was sorry, apologized, and then thanked us, got into the ambulance, and started cooperating with the EMS. And I
Wow.
was like, if that isn't a sign of the power of God, of prayer, but so that is probably one of the biggest risks that I see right now.
Mhm, mhm. Thank you for sharing that. That's really impactful. And Myron, that may be a good segue because I think in thinking about that circle around that youth, right? So often we can look at our community, we can look at the people involved with our organization. And I love to give people the benefit of the doubt in that everyone would love to help. We just
mhm,
don't know how we fit in, right?
mhm,
And like in Eva, in that, I can imagine how many mothers yearned for the same like
mhm,
power to be like, baby, I'm here, right? I want to hold you. Or like the coach that sees him and is like, you could be one of my players, right? So I feel like thinking about the circle, it's oftentimes like, well, wait, I don't know if I can, or like, how do I fit in, or I don't want to impose, or, and so Myron, I think that that's a good segue of like looking at kind of the wide frame of this, but then also practical things,
Yeah.
in general of this topic.
Yeah. And maybe, so is it Eva or Ava? I'm sorry. It was kind of
Eva.
Eva. So
Mhm.
Eva kind of shares about the way that she's able to respond as an individual and having relationship and being motivated by this beautiful mother's heart. And then someone else nearby is responding with, hey, I can't do anything, but I can pray. Like I'm not trained on sticking a steroid into someone's chest plate, but I can pray for someone. Um, and Whitney's bringing up this great question. Like we are all called to respond in different ways. So would love to hear what are some ways that when you are finding a young person who's at risk or is experiencing homelessness, what are some ways that either your organization responds or that you've responded or you've seen your ministry or volunteers respond? We'd love to hear from you guys. What are some things we can do about it?
Because I've worked in the school system for 30 years, I've come across several different kind of situations, with kids being in compromising situations. And because I'm not trained to handle a lot of the situations, I have to position myself, or I did position myself, to befriend the kid, to feel comfortable enough to come and talk about it. Because a lot of times, home, the first thing they say is, "Don't you go out talking about our business," but yet still you want to make them feel safe that they can talk about it, so that we can get them to some help. Um, and that usually worked for me, as I enroll them or as I get to know them. And this worked, working in a high school. It was more effective on the high school level, as opposed to the elementary school. The last few years, I worked about 5 years in the elementary school, but on the high school level, it was a little more effective because I think they were tired of being in the situation they were in. And it
Mhm.
was like, I think I can trust her enough to say, this is what's going on. And not so much, can you help me? But if I tell it, they didn't come out and say, can you help me? But by them talking about it, it was subconsciously saying, can you help me?
Mhm. And sometimes as a young person, like they don't know how to solve their family's crisis, but
Yeah,
they need that relationship. Thank you for
yeah.
sharing that, Brenda. And if you guys are okay, I'm just going to make some notes so we can kind of list out some of these responses while you guys are sharing. But yeah.
So Myron, I was going to mention this past Sunday, we had 6 young people come into the church service, maybe close to an hour late. And one of the things we try to do is not make a big deal out of that. Hey, come. I don't care if you come for the last 5 minutes or 1 minute, just come. And I appreciate the senior pastor has the same sentiment. He didn't make a big deal out of it. And so I think one of the ways in which we can help these young people that are at risk is to let them know that they're also at a place of love. And we just
Mhm.
loved on them when the service was over. We got around them. Hey, who are you? What's your name? And find out. Then we found out that they were homeless and they were staying at a local hotel and they took a couple of buses just to get to us. So we
Mm.
addressed again the real practical need. Are you hungry? Of course. Young people are always hungry. And so we started to we got things that they could start eating right away, and then found out they were set for a place to stay at a hotel for a couple of weeks. So that wasn't their immediate need. And so we just try to address those immediate needs. But I think, like you were saying, Myron, just letting them know that they're loved and not trying to single out their activities or maybe even how they're dressing, but just loving them in practical ways.
Love that. Thanks for sharing, Phil.
Miss Willeen, if I may use Creative Life as an example, I think, relationally, it's it's Eva mom mode, right? It's like, I'm seeing you as my child. Like, I'm in go mode. Sky's the limit. What you need, baby, right? And then, but I think about Creative Life, Miss Willeen, if you'll share kind of recognizing organizationally, while majority of your students are at risk for homelessness, at risk, not necessarily homeless, you look at the reality of Creative Life for being a school that provides scholarships for tuition, wraparound services, like offering summer school. What that does for like that stops kids from being homeless, right? To be in a program, after school program, the arts, meals at school, and then the biggest thing I believe, not biggest, but one of the great things of your program also, or your school, is transportation and picking your kids up no matter where they live or what mom says is the reason why they can't come. So would you want to share, Miss Lillian, more to kind of organizationally how Creative Life takes those risks and kind of diminishes them for so many families?
Sure, sure. Thank you. I know that I was thinking about a particular family when you was talking. They lived in Westwood, and we are off of South Parkway, it's a pretty good piece. And so with the transportation, they kept saying, I said, well, why are y'all not coming to the after school program? Why are you not coming to the summer, the summer enrichment? And they said, well, we don't have a ride. We don't have a ride. I said, where do you live? But they had moved because they were like not too far from here, maybe about 3 or 4 blocks. And so I said, okay, well, where do you live? And they gave us their address. And so when I found out where they lived, I mean, it was way out. And I said, wow. I said, well, I tell you what, from now on, just give me a call. Because I gave them my number. I said, just give me a call when you need a ride and we'll come and pick you up. I said, if I have to come pick you up myself. So we do those types of things. And then we have 6 weeks of summer camp, where we call it summer enrichment, where the child, we feed them, of course, breakfast, lunch, and then a snack. And then we also have one of Dr. Bibbs, which is our president CEO, one of her main goal is to make sure that the child is able to read before 3rd grade. So we're pushing that. And then the arts, Dr. Bibbs, she's a playwright. And so she writes plays, specifically, some of them are for the children, so that when they're able, because she found out that most children didn't know how to read. So when she started doing the plays, she would give them a script and they couldn't read it. So she said, oh, no, this will never work. So she started this after school program where the teachers are able to help them read, and they're able to, do the plays, this and the other, and they love the plays. And so it's really an eye opener when you can see that a child is able to see that you really do love them, because you really do have to love them where they are. And you have to make sure that, we love them just like they're our own children, because they are. When they're here, they're ours. When they leave, they're ours. So that's one of the things I want to say. Thank you.
Yeah. I think also, Miss Brenda, you mentioning that you're a part of, or have historically been a part of the school system and in schools in Memphis, probably we're at the statistic of 1 in every 75 kids is actually homeless, right? That's not including our charter schools. That's not including any other, just our main public school system. And when we look at that statistic, right, and we think about the overworked, underpaid educators and guidance counselors that we're co-laboring for the benefit of our children with, right? Miss Brenda, can you speak to situations where potentially, like for me, I've met with a guidance counselor who has said, hey, Miss Whitney, can your organization help this family? I gave them the forms to file for X, Y, and Z. And then I go meet with the family, and the mom's like, I don't know where my son's birth certificate is. Like, we had a house fire. That's why we're homeless right now. Like, I can't apply for this. And there's these barriers in place. Do you have experience in that capacity where it's like, oh, this organization, we're here, we help, but then it's just barrier after barrier that's setting in to really stop any productivity?
Yeah, and the sad part about it is that those people that we work with are low educated people also. The parents are low educated, their is not very high, so they don't they don't have the wherewithal to have the stick-to-itness to keep going. We can help with the birth certificates because when they enroll, they have to have a birth certificate. So we got a copy of that for you. We'll give you a copy. Or there are times where they have to have the original. We've even sent off to that state to even get the original. I don't have their immunizations, or I don't have whatever, and it's a challenge to try to keep them focused, to stick to it, to get to the help that they need. In their mind, it's just easier to just say, I give up and I'm comfortable staying where I am, rather than to move forward. Now, sometimes, believe it or not, the kids take charge, and they will come and ask for additional help. And can you help me? My mother, she won't do this, or my dad won't do that, or I can't get this, and can you help? So we try every avenue we can, from the office to the counselor to the principal to the social workers, even, and some of those kids have, even because of their attendance, has made it even to the district attorney's office, because now the parents have to go to these classes because of their continued absenteeism. So after so many days, we have to turn in this number of absentees, and if it continues, we got to turn in this many absentees, and then eventually it lands on the district attorney's office, and then they get involved. So it's a process. Some of them are successful and some of them are not.
Right. Yeah, Eva, I see in the chat you shared creating a safe space. And I think that is something that I would like, probably, if I'm heard saying one thing today, is if you're getting a lot of just yes and no answers, are you that person's safe space, right? Like, and what's the why behind the why? Like, and if it's just, oh, I'll do it, like, it's like, well, then what's the hang up here? And I think if I could challenge everyone with one thing, it would be to walk through the system that you're saying the family needs, right? So if you're referring a family to rapid rehoming, or they need to go to a shelter, or they need to book a hotel room, or they need to go down to the food bank and blah, blah, blah. All of these things that we say, here's 1 million resources. It's not that hard. Just go do it. Until you've walked through that system to really know, hey, like in Memphis, when you fill out a form through our homeless shelters, it's all under one system. And if you fill out a form, most of our families believe that that form then means I'm in the system, I'm waiting for a call back. That system is cleared every single day at 3 p.m. So if you want to be rehoused, you have to apply by 8 a.m. every single day until they give you a call back. But families don't know that. Also, homelessness in Memphis is categorized as you're sleeping in your car or in a park. So if our organization helps a family and puts them in a hotel, and when Miss Lee's family gets the phone call saying, hey, we're ready to rehome you, if Miss Lee says, oh, we've been sleeping in a hotel, our rapid rehousing organizations are going to say, oh, I'm sorry, you no longer apply for our services. And we would have no idea of those types of barriers unless we're actually walking through these additional things. And then a whole nother category, if we talk about the barriers for English language learners in Memphis, Tennessee, or most of our cities, right?
Yeah.
So looking at that organizationally, I think moves to the next question of like, does anyone have any practical tools systematically, like changing that bigger identity, whether it be the school system or our true governing bodies, of effective ways their ministry kind of steps into those gaps?
Well, and Whitney, can I back you up for just a second?
Yeah.
In our pre-conversation, I loved how you broke down this idea of relational response, and we've heard some really great relational response, and then organizational response. There's things we can do as an organization, and then systematically. And I loved how you kind of outlined these buckets that not all of us are called to respond in every area. But these are some buckets that help simplify, like, oh, I may not be able to go advocate at the state capitol to create more just laws that improve access for English as a learner language people, but I may be able to do this organizationally or advocate for our organization to be more accessible, our church to be more accessible and accommodating, or to overcome just this one specific barrier, whether it's transportation or whatnot. So can you just talk about that just a little more and just educate us? I felt like it was such a good thing for us just to really understand these buckets.
Yes, I think again, Eva, you painted like the perfect picture to me of surrounding this child as a circle, right? And I think of even in that moment, right? Even as it's 5 o'clock traffic, people are coming home and folks step out of the car. Who is likely surrounding that child? You probably have a parent, you probably have a pastor, a youth worker, a teacher, right? You probably have some sort of medical professional. You probably have some sort of coach or someone that believes in the arts or sports, right? And then potentially you have some sort of government official, whether it be fire and response, police, or an actual elected official that maybe is incorporated in that circle, right? The easiest thing is to like look at it biblically, right? Like we are not all equipped with the same spiritual gifts. So why are we trying to square peg round hole how we're serving our youth, right? So I can give this specific example with Miss Laline in my relationship. She is an educator and works at a small school in South Memphis. She just shared with us all of these programs that she works for or does with the children. And My Town Miracles, we don't provide any programming. Ms. Moline can meet with that family and talk through specific needs. And sometimes it's as simple as me saying, oh, that's just a phone call to X, Y, and Z. Here's a resource. Other times it's saying, oh, we need to like gather more people together and look at this as a bigger concept. And then beyond that, it's being able to take the data and just like social awareness of saying, why are so many kiddos leaving or would leave Memphis Shelby County Schools for Creative Life? And what's being offered, and how do we help Miss Moline and Creative Life become this bigger space and place, right? But organizationally, relationally, Miss Moline may be working with that student. Organizationally, I may step in, but then it's my duty to pass that to look at more systemic issues or be able to find the platform to communicate with, oh, one of our councilmen, his family participates in our Christmas initiative. What does that look like for someone who historically votes red to be a part of a community that is historically blue? And what are we challenging in that status quo, through all those levels? But everyone can have that role in all three buckets, but it's going to look different I'm able to give, time, talent, treasure, right? It may come across in a different way for each of those.
Yeah, so you asked a question. I'm going to put it back into the chat. You asked so what kind of resources or tools are we using to effectively minister, instruct? Maybe I could say, what are we using, and what are some ways we could either address this differently, relationally, systemically, or organizationally? Is that a fair question? I think we'd love to hear, what are some ways that you could challenge your own organization or the areas that you can influence and the places that we're leading to minister more effectively if we think through this lens of relationally, organizationally, and systemically?
Yeah. Well, and I think what we've already heard relationally would be, we're driving that extra mile. We're taking those kids home. We're picking up that kid. Maybe we're taking home their laundry. We're washing their clothes, right? We've heard a couple of those examples. Then organizationally, I think it was Miss Brenda, you shared, and Miss Boleen, we host a food pantry to make sure we're combating food insecurity with this homelessness issue. We have a clothes closet, so what are some other, things beyond those that maybe we haven't mentioned yet?
Also, welcome, Jay. Good to see your face, sir.
Thank you. Good to see your face, sir.
One of the things that I have recently decided to do in my neighborhood is attend school board meetings.
Ooh.
Just because I don't feel like they represent the community as well as they could. And we've had some changes within the school that are frustrating, but just being a presence, I guess that's more of an organizational piece, but just being aware of what's going on in that area.
Yeah, but Stephanie, I think I challenge that on a relational. So you're at a school board meeting and you have this moment. Then what are you doing with that information, right? I believe that you're probably then contacting your DVULI cohort, the churches around you, and saying, hey, did you guys realize X, Y, and Z is being offered? Or, is that an accurate assessment of like, it's not just attending for knowledge, it's you're relationally stepping in.
I think it's more of an advocacy place that I'm stepping into with bringing my neighbors that maybe didn't feel like they had a seat there, and I'm hoping to encourage them to realize that their seat is there as well. At least that's the space that I currently, my messages are full of, I'll put it that way.
Yeah. Stephanie, I love that you go to your school board meetings. And I think oftentimes, especially when we're navigating systems that have like traditional power structures attached to them, many times people feel uncomfortable or insecure about just entering into that space.
Amen.
But when we're talking about young people who are literally past the margins, that like they're on our streets, they are at the risk of homelessness or they're experiencing homelessness, they need advocacy. So when you say like, hey, I'm doing advocacy, we want to like say like, well, what does that do? Like they need advocates.
Right.
And I've been surprised at when ordinary voices of people from the community just say, hey, I want to speak up on behalf of young people who are experiencing homelessness. It's not like the highest prioritized topic in the world, but when we are brave enough to advocate for that space, I'm surprised at how quickly people actually do want to respond. There is still empathy and compassion in our world when we're bold enough to ask for that. So I love that you're doing that. And it is part of what we talk about in DVULI, especially at NC2, is a systematic mindset. How do we think systemically? And so I'd love to hear just what are some other ways that we can try to break down some of the systemic barriers that are leading to this.
I would love to ask if you guys have similar opportunities in your city. So we have a 211 phone number, and you can call and you can start plugging in what resources, and it's a full resource kind of yellow pages for families to be able to strategically identify what resources are for free and around the city and in their neighborhood. That's been very helpful. And also Facebook groups. Do you guys I nothing groups all around the city where, if we have a need for a family? Just most recently we had a mom who, again, trying to move from at risk at homelessness, go into a job interview, right? And she had found out about it, and so got on those groups and said, does anyone have these sizes? Like, we didn't have a budget to go get her a wardrobe for that interview, but the Memphis community sure came through and gave her, a week's worth of outfits. So do you guys have those types of resources that are kind of set up by your city or town?
We're implementing case management. And even though I work a lot in substance abuse and mental health, case management is like my number one go-to because I feel like that's preventative care. I feel like that's why insurance companies are now paying for it. And because they know if I can help families or individuals with the resources that they need. So one of the things I've noticed is just educating people. A lot. I was shocked at how many people, because I was a single mother with 2 kids living in that, housing authority, subsidized housing and on welfare. And, I've been able to overcome a lot of different barriers. So working for DCBS, which is our welfare office here in Louisville, I learned a lot, and a lot of families and a lot of individuals there, they don't know about the different resources that are available to them. Homelessness has increased tremendously here in Louisville, and to see a lot of it is due to lack of knowledge of the resources. So just that educational piece.
Also, the University of Memphis, I believe it's under the anthropology department, but it may be the nonprofit leadership. Every year, their graduate students literally do cold calls to nonprofits, and they also compile lists. So if you have a big university, even some of our private institutions do the same thing, and they kind of collect. So sometimes they're conflicting, but that's been immensely impactful. And it also empowers families to stay, here's these resources. And usually it's, hey, I came to you with this issue. But when we start peeling back the onion, right? It's like, oh, it's not actually that you just need help with rent this month. It's also that your utility bill, like, let's get you enrolled in this program and this and that and that and that. So looking for those types of that support, even looking at internships for college students who are enrolled in nonprofit management and leadership development. They often need service hours and can serve as your questionnaire for your families of the cold call of, hey, Phil, how's your family doing? Do you guys have, the food you want in your house this week? Like, what's going on? I think that's a great resource too. I do want to go back again to thinking about relationally in a different way as well, in that connecting your relationship with your families to the institutions in an advocacy way. And my example with that is when I worked for a program before this role in a neighborhood, there was zero attendance for parent-teacher conferences. And we were also hosting parent events. And what I recognized, because this school in Memphis has a huge pride around generational, like having your grandfather have gone to the same school. And the strongest reason why parents, which everyone believes, either they don't care or they're working too many jobs, the hours weren't correct. And majority of our parents said that they feared going back into the school from intimidation of their experience when it was their school. So what we started to set up, and I think that, if you have churches in the neighborhood, if your program building is in the neighborhood, having these satellite parent and student meetings, we allowed teachers to come to our program where, the kids are playing their Xbox and they see their English teacher walk in, and we're hosting these meetings off site because it removed that fear of like, I'm in this bad place where they only call when my kid has done something wrong, to where that's when kind of the floodgates opened of like, whoa, this behavior stuff is actually stemmed because we're bouncing around, yada, yada, yada. So kind of you stepping in on that relational way of how do I use what I know my family's experiences are to change or to improve the system that they are having to step into every single day.
I love it, Whitney. And it's just a real honor to get to be on the call with world-changing people. So we only have a few minutes left. I'd love to just open up for resources. We've been talking about resources, connections, other collaborative points. Are there groups that we can be a part of? Whitney talked about Facebook group. One I want to talk about in particular is Care Portal. I'm going to drop them into the chat here. Domingo Mota, I forget what class he is. He's probably class of 09 or somewhere in there, but he's a DVULI grad. He's the Western Field Zone Director. So we do have DVULI connections there. They try to connect churches that don't necessarily have that relational access to groups and organizations that do have relational access for families who are in crisis. So if you have a young person who is at risk of homelessness, or they need cleats to play on the football team, and you know that, well, you can connect it to Care Portal, and there will be someone who can connect us with some of those resources. Specifically for other groups that are directly interfacing with homelessness, there's a network called Citygate that is often gospel missions and rescue missions. We're a part of that, but it's not necessarily the best connection for all groups, but it is a popular one for if that's the focus of your ministry. So are there other groups or connections that we should be aware of, that you guys are aware of? Katie put feedingamerica.org. Thank you, Katie. Stephanie's compiling these. I'll put one of my favorite books. It's called When We Walk By. You can listen to it if you have Spotify Premium. You can listen to it in a couple sittings. Other resources that you guys would be a fan of?
It's not necessarily a resource, and Eva has talked about it a little bit, but just the mental health impact of poverty and homelessness. So looking at what systems and what things are available within your community to manage that, because it's, nothing comes from nothing. And so needing to address some of those things. So looking at the mental health care organizations that are in your city and being aware of what's available to people who are experiencing trauma is really helpful.
Yeah. Ava puts Metro United Way. Love it. Thank you for that, Stephanie. And Stephanie, you did say that you're going to compile resources and send out this recording as well. So
Yeah,
if we think of
you'll
something
get
after the
a
call, which we always do, we always find the right answer right after we hang up. Can we email that to you to have it included on the list of resources?
please do. You can go ahead and send those to me. I'll drop my email in the chat. If you forget it, you can go on the website and it's linked to my profile on the directory. Or you can email staff@DVULI.org, and Emily will make sure this gets to me as well.
Excellent. Well, that's great. I mean, we have 1 minute left, so I want to thank everyone for joining us. Whitney, thank you for your expertise and for leading us and moderating this so well.
This was awesome, y'all. Thank you, guys. If I can leave you with one challenge, it's to not get bogged down by the system that we are all a part of, and consider what you can do for one today that we would like to do for many.
Real quick, can I say something before we leave?
Please.
So I put pictures in the chat, and youth at an alternative school, Power Inc., we partner with JCPS, and they labeled these kids as really bad kids. We are revealing this mural. They designed it. It's a lotus flower. And me, I'm just completely ignorant on flowers. I like roses, The youth picked the lotus flower, and they educated me on exactly what the lotus flower means and the fact that it grows from being in the mud. So I thought that was just really, really dope. It's not for the pictures I sent you guys are not really finished yet. It's not the finished product, but in the bubbles coming from the ocean and the flower, there's going to be affirmations reminding everybody.
Beautiful.
Oh my gosh, I was so amazed. DVULI introduced me to different ideas and an art mural. I was like, what? Kids are not going to be into that. They loved it. So when I say the safe space, that is one of the things that I always stress when we gather youth. This is a safe space, and that always creates a relationship and that bond. So that safe space is what I push. That and food.
True.
That and food. And that's just being honest.
No
If I feed them, they really love me.
True.
Yeah.
Eva, thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Stephanie, can you share what's going to be on the docket for next month, and then I'll close in prayer.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and close in prayer, and I'll add that to the link when I send it out.
Heavenly Father, thank you for our time together. We thank you too, Lord, for the love that is being aimed at these precious youth that are vulnerable. Lord God, we pray, turn things around. May we be those cities that respond with your love and with resources that would bring great healing and growth to and the development to these precious young people. Again, thank you for this time in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you for being part of
Right.
our discussion, and Stephanie will definitely get everything out to you.
Yep,
Thanks,
I will
guys.
Thank
be
you.
compiling this, and you can also find the recording on our website. So I will post that on Monday after I do some edits.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks, my guys.